Brahma paid a visit. Actually, every day of Brahma he pays a visit. The place where Krishna performs his pastimes. I'll go back a little bit. Once upon a time, there's a creation. Actually, there's two creations. There's the creation of Vishnu, Mahavishnu, specifically, casts his glance over the shadow of his internal potency. What's the name of Mahavishnu's internal potency? Starts with an R. Brahma. Brahma Devi. Brahma Devi. Just like in the Vaikuntha realm, her name is Lakshmi. She's the concept of Narayana. And expanding from Narayana in Vaikuntha are the forms of Vishnu that are partial expansions of Narayan, and they deal with the material creation. The first one of them is Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu. And he glances over the shadow of Brahma Devi with a compassionate desire to give this Chaya Devi, or shadow potency, some service. And with his glance, Mahavishnu's glance, the totality of the living entities that were present within his transcendental body during the cosmic annihilation, they're entrusted to the glance of Mahavishnu, along with Brahma Devi's subpotency, one of her subpotencies, named time, or Kala Shakti, and Jiva Shakti. All those living entities, carried by the glance of Vishnu, are cast into this Chaya Devi, or shadow potency, and creation starts to happen. The creation starts to happen by Mahavishnu's exhaling. That's how it starts. When he exhales, from the pores of his body come golden seeds, spiritual seeds, and they're seeds of a universe. And those golden seeds expand as he exhales, come in contact with that Chaya Devi that now has been differentiated into 24 different elements, and those 24 different elements cling, conglomerate is Bhaktisiddhanta's word. They cling to the seeds. They start to expand. And they expand, and they expand, and they expand. Universes inside the seeds expand. And then Mahavishnu does something very wonderful. He expands himself within each universe. And that form that he expands himself into is also an eternal form. It's of him. Not once upon a time there wasn't, and then there was. It's an eternal form called Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. Garbhodakshayi Vishnu enters into each universe, the sun universe. And he perspires. His perspiration fills up half the universe. It's called the Garbhodak Ocean. He lies down on that Garbhodak Ocean, reclining on Anantashesh. Anantashesh. And within his body is one universe worth of living entities that he is entrusted with as he enters into the universe. And the total karma of all the living entities within the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, that's the total karma of a universe's worth of living entities, starts to become activated by the time energy. The living entity's karma or start to fructify. And it fructifies in the form of a stem and blossoms into a lotus flower, and on top of that lotus flower appears Brahma. Many things happen. Brahma gets some intelligence and some creative potency and many things, and he builds the universe. Inside the shell, that's called the subcreation. And then after he builds the universe, he populates the universe with all varieties of living entities, from all those living entities that were within the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He gives them a place to stay. He gives them bodies to continue their karma from where they left off from the previous creation. And that's what he does in the first day of his life. The first part of the first day, because his day is really long. And during each of his days, it's in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Bhagavad Gita. The duration of Brahma's day is Sahasra Yuga, or 1,000 cycles of the 4 yugas. Like right now we're in Kali Yuga, right? Kali Yuga. And the age before is when Krishna appeared. What was that called? Dwapara Yuga, right? And the age when Lord Ramachandra appeared had a different name, a different yuga. Treta Yuga, right? And then the first one is called Satya. So there's the 4. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. Each of those 4 yugas cycling takes 4,320,000 years. 4,320,000 years. You got a special camera thing going over here. She's a photographer. It's okay. You do your thing. It's okay. 4,320,000 years is one yuga cycle, and 1,000 of those makes one day of Brahma. So during each day of Brahma, he wants to go say Hari Bol to Krishna. Because Krishna appears once in a day of Brahma. Krishna in his original form, same as the form in Vrindavan, appears in this world, in the earthly realm, and Brahma comes to pay his respects. So when Brahma came to pay his respects, he saw some things that were very surprising. He saw the cowherd boys playing when Krishna was just 4 years old. They were playing, they were herding the calves, they were doing what little 4-year-old boys like to do. They just play and play and play. And then Brahma saw Krishna give liberation. All eyes are on the doorway. I'm just going to wait till everybody's eyes come back. Okay. The squeaky door. Thank you. So what happened? Krishna liberated Aghasura. Who was Aghasura? Any of you young people know? Yes? Who was Aghasura? What was he? A demon. But what was he shaped like? A snake. It was a really big snake. He was 8 miles long. That's a big snake. And his jaw, when open, the upper jaw was touching the clouds. He was big. And his plan was to kill Krishna. But it worked the other way around. Krishna killed him, and he got liberation. His soul left his body, hovered in the air like another shining sun. When Krishna left the body of Aghasura, that soul merged into Krishna's body. He merged into Krishna's body. It's a type of liberation called Sayuja. Sayuja means merging into the form of the Lord or merging into the effulgence of the Lord. There's two types. He merged into the body of the Lord. And he got liberation. Brahma saw the whole thing. He was above, zooming around in his swan carrier, and he saw. And then after that, the cowherd boys sat down to have lunch. They're hungry. So while the cowherd boys were having lunch, Brahma got a mischievous idea. Bad idea. He was going to test his power against Krishna's power to see what Krishna would do. Because he's very powerful. I mean, who can build the universe? So he kidnapped the cowherd boys and calves and waited to see what Krishna would do. What did Krishna do? He manifested identical forms of the cowherd boys and calves, which bewildered Brahma. And that, not only that, for each one of the cowherd boys, he simultaneously manifested a form of Narayan with 4 arms. And each of the forms of Narayan then manifested all of their opulences. All of their opulences. What's the opulence of Narayan? There's no limit. And there were so many cowherd boys and so many Narayans and so many opulences, and they were all offering prayers and worship. And then all of a sudden, poof, they all just disappeared. Except for one. Krishna was smiling. Brahma fainted, seeing what he saw, because he understood those weren't just cowherd boys. Those were Krishna looking just like the cowherd boys. And just like the calves, because that was another part of the pastime, which we'll tell another day. So Brahma started offering prayers after he regained consciousness. And we've gotten as far as, well, I'm going to cover a section that we already covered yesterday, but there's a section, watch the screen. Hopefully he's going to get big. There he goes. And it's a recording, and you have to listen carefully. I have the volume up full, but still you have to listen carefully. And it's someone narrating verses 15 to 29. Here we go. Wait a minute. I have to change the setting.
Lord Brahma attempts to express the ramifications of the opulence that he has seen Krishna display. He prays to Krishna, "O Lord, I previously was unable to either understand or see you due to the coverings of your own Maya, your illusory energy. But you are the controller of that Maya, and that was proved by Mother Yashoda's seeing the universe within your abdomen. Now, at the present, that universe is externally manifest as your inconceivable energy, and it is therefore all that I perceive. Today, by your manifesting all the cows, cowherd boys, and Vishnu forms who are being worshipped by all living entities, you've demonstrated that the entire creation is your inconceivable potency. And now I'm seeing before me the original form of the unlimited, supreme, absolute truth. To the ignorant, you seem to be of this material world, although it is you who appears as Brahma, the creator, who appears as Vishnu, the maintainer, and as Shiva, the destroyer. To demonstrate that you, the absolute truth, is an unlimited transcendental person, you descend within the universe as avatars, and you take birth among the demigods, sages, humans, animals, and the aquatics. As an avatar, you then, by your spiritual potency, perform your innumerable, inconceivable, mysterious pastimes. Due to you, this entire universe, which, like a dream, is by nature unreal, nevertheless appears real. And thus, it covers one's consciousness and assails one with repeated miseries. This universe appears real because it is manifested by the potency of illusion emanating from you, whose unlimited transcendental forms are full of eternal happiness and knowledge. You are the one Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth, self-manifesting, endless, and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival, and free from all material designations. Your happiness cannot be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are the indestructible nectar of immortality. By the grace of his spiritual master, a jnani can mix bhakti with his jnana. He will then be able to see you as the soul of all souls. He will be able to see you as the super soul of his own self. This vision will allow him to cross the ocean of material existence. For one who has thus realized you, the illusory energy at once subsides, for he is free of the false vision of perceiving anything as separate from you. Seeing you with this vision of knowledge and remaining in knowledge of you, devoid of the false perceptions that are the cause of the existence of the material world, his ignorance and illusion cease. Therefore, through knowledge of you and knowledge of himself as your eternal servant, neither liberation nor bondage have meaning for him, just as day and night have no meaning for one present on the sun planet. How foolish are the jnanis How foolish are the Mayavadis! They're fools because they consider your form as a manifestation of illusion. How foolish are the conditioned souls! Regardless of how intelligent they think themselves as being, they all perceive themselves as their bodies, and they thus fail to see their self as part of you. They're all fools because they reject you, and in so doing, they search for the Supreme Soul outside of your Supreme Personality. How foolish are all of these so-called learned men. O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees who have added bhakti to their jnana seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake? My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years.
Well done. Well done. It's one of my favorite parts of covering this topic is this little section. A theme throughout all of Brahma's prayers is the singular importance of bhakti and the insufficiency of gyan. However, several times, as we heard just now, 2 times, the jnani, if they come in contact with a bhakta and they somehow are able to mix bhakti with their gyan, they may not, but they may come to realize Krishna also. Bhagavad Gita, right? Bahunam janmanamante Gyanavan mam prapadyate. So it's possible that many bahu janma, many lifetimes. Emphasis on the bhakti process is a theme throughout. And that's the way by which adhoksaja, or he who's beyond the senses, can be perceived. And it's the way that the ajita can be jitta, can be conquered. So now we're going to go to the next section, which is a very nice section. Brahma, in the previous verses to the ones we just covered, he declared Krishna, this 4-year-old boy standing there with a lump of yogurt in his left hand, smiling at Brahma, that he's the original source of Narayan. And he gives his explanations how that's possible. Then, how does one know that? So text 29, this is the last verse from the ones that were just recited. My Lord, if one is favored even by a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. vichinvan. Lesha means even a slight trace. Prasad, mercy of his lotus feet. So that's the conclusion of a certain section of his prayers. Now begins another section. This comment at the top there, that's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur introducing us to the next section. It's not actually what Krishna says, but it's the contemplation of Krishna. Very well, Brahma, now that you have understood me, what is your desire? Here's the request that Brahma makes, one of them. My dear Lord, I therefore pray to be so fortunate. You'll see this Sanskrit phrase, Buri Bhago, several times. Buri Bhaga. I therefore pray to be so fortunate that in this life, as Lord Brahma, or in another life, wherever I take my birth, I may be counted as one of your devotees. I pray that wherever I may be, even among the animal species, I can engage in devotional service at your lotus feet. Pada Pallavam. Now Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, their mood changes from glorification of Krishna to focusing on Braja, because he's visiting Vrindavan, where Krishna was performing his pastimes, and he's appreciating the kind of love that the residents of Vrindavan have, which, by the way, is a very essential part of the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam. While the Bhagavatam is describing Bhagavan, or one who possesses all opulences in full, because Brahma has already seen that, the opulences of Bhagavan and the unlimitedness of them. He's now going to go to the real message, the higher concluding message of the Bhagavatam, and that's the superlative position of Krishna in Vrindavan, the superlative position of prema, or love, for Krishna that the residents of Vrindavan have. That's the topic. O Almighty Lord, how greatly fortunate, Ati Danya, how greatly fortunate are the cows and ladies of Vrindavan, the nectar of whose breast milk you have happily drunk to your full satisfaction, taking the form of their calves and children. That is, Brahma has also witnessed, I skipped over it, but now I'll say it, during that time that Krishna manifested himself in forms identical with each of the cowherd boys. For 1 year, when the cowherd boys went back to the Vrindavan village, the mothers thought, these boys, that's my son. Although it wasn't their son, it was Krishna. And why did Krishna do that? Because they had a prayer, each one of them. They had such love for their sons, which is natural, but they had even greater love for Krishna, which was unnatural. When mother loves another son more than their own. But they all were like that. They wanted Krishna as their son, so Krishna became their son. And the cows wanted to have Krishna as their calf to directly feed, so Krishna became their calf, and they directly fed Krishna their milk. All the Vedic sacrifices performed from time immemorial up to the present day have not given you so much satisfaction. Yat triptaya, ret triptaya. So Krishna likes the love of the residents of Vrindavan so much, he subordinated himself to become their children, each one, and their calf. We saw the painting where during that 1 year, you know the story? Do you know the story? No? Okay. The cows were grazing on the side of Govardhan Hill. Here's Govardhan Hill. They're up on Govardhan Hill. And down at the bottom of Govardhan Hill, they saw the calves, because the calves were in the care of the cowherd boys. But the cowherd boys were Krishna, and the calves were Krishna. And the cows, seeing their calves, became really enthused. They started running down the side of Govardhan Hill. And you rarely see a cow run. But they were running. I've seen a cow run. It's really funny to watch. They're really clumsy. But they sometimes run. So they're running down the hill, Govardhan Hill. And the cowherd men didn't want them to go down the hill and have their milk taken by the calves, because they wanted to take them back to the goshal and have them milked in the goshal, and then take milk from the calves, or give milk to the calves. So they raised their sticks and started, saying whatever you say in local language, stop. But the cows didn't stop. So they kept chasing. And when they get to the bottom of the hill, when they saw their sons, they forgot everything and embraced their sons. The calves went to the cows and took the milk from the calves. And everyone became filled with love for Krishna, because there was so many Krishnas, both as calves and cowherd boys. Very nice scene. Very beautiful scene. And all it was is Krishna's activities reciprocating with the love of his devotees. So how fortunate. Krishna for 1 year became the son of each of the ladies of Vrindavan, each of the ones that had children, and the calves of the cows. Next. Yet, even though the extent of good fortune of those residents of Vrindavan is inconceivable, we 11 presiding deities of the various senses, headed by Lord Shiva, are also most fortunate. There's the Bhuribhaga word again. See in the verse? Bhuribhaga. And Bhagya Mahima. Bhagya is a nice word. Same root as Bhagavan. Bhaga. Bhagya Mahima. Okay. Because the senses of these devotees of Vrindavan are the cups through which we repeatedly drink the nectarian, intoxicating beverage of the honey of your lotus feet. Now, if I was going to be here for one more day, I would give a whole presentation on just this verse, because our acharyas really go to town with this one. In the process of creation, there's creation and subcreation. Like, here's a table. It's a wooden table. And so it's earth, primarily earth elements. There's other elements mixed in. There's some water. There's some fire. There's some air. But it's primarily earth. But before there was earth, where there's, trees and stuff, there's elements in their, listen to this word, primordial or prototype stage. What's that? They're not manifest in the form of creation, but they're there like in a big warehouse, subtle warehouse. And then there's subtle senses. What's a subtle sense? Here's one. Here's a hand for the sense of touch. But it's not just a hand. There's the sense of touch that's subtle before there's even a hand. Before there's bodies, there's the sense of touch or the sense of smell. And the demigods are overseeing those functions. That's what demigods do. And according to what Brahma is saying here, there's presiding deities of the various senses, but listen to this. The bodies of the resident Vrindavan are spiritual, like Krishna's body is spiritual. So they don't require demigods. They require the internal potency, the spiritual potency, and that's how their senses work. They can perceive something spiritual with spiritual senses, and they can understand things in a spiritual way, according to the movements of Krishna's Yogamaya potency. However, the demigods don't have that same capacity because their bodies aren't spiritual. But listen to this. The residents of Vrindavan are very merciful, and they extend their mercy to the presiding deities of the senses, so the presiding deities of the senses can experience Krishna through their senses. Should I say it again? I can see people on the other side of the room, but I can't see Krishna. Maybe some of you can see Krishna, but you probably can, like me, just can see stuff on the other side of the room. But the residents of Vrindavan, they can see Krishna as he is. All the time. All the time. And the demigods cannot see as they see, except through the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan. The residents of Vrindavan extend their mercy to the demigods. So through the senses of the residents of Vrindavan, they can perceive Krishna as he is because of their mercy. And they have senses that don't require demigods because they're spiritual senses. It's very interesting understanding. The commentary is extensive. And to cover the topic a little more slowly, I did it kind of quickly. It's fascinating. So what's going on right now is Brahma is looking up. He's the topmost person in the universe, and he's looking up to the residents of Vrindavan, saying, wow, they're up there. Remember this word, Buri Bhaga. Here's now, my greatest possible good fortune would be to take any birth, whatever, in this forest of Gokula, and have my head bathed by the dust falling from the lotus feet of any of its residents. Their entire life and soul is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Mukunda, the dust of whose lotus feet is still being searched for in the Vedic mantras. Now, he manifested the Vedic mantras, right? Tene Brahma Hrida Adi Kavaye. The Vedas were manifested in his heart by Krishna, and from his mouths came the Vedas, including the Vedic mantras. And the Vedic mantras are still searching for the dust of lotus feet of Mukunda, and the residents of Vrindavan are always in the association of the lotus feet of the resident of Vrindavan, of Krishna. So he wants some dust on his head. The topmost person in our universe, the head of our sampradaya, is looking up to the cowherd people in Vrindavan. So we should also, right? That's the implication. They're very, very special personalities. Now, here's a verse that we saw before, day before yesterday, I think it was, whenever it was. It's a verse from the third canto, again spoken by Brahma in the process of creation. He's speaking to Lord Vishnu. He's speaking to Lord Vishnu. Here's the situation. When Brahma was born on the stem of the lotus flower that came from the stem, which came from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, what existed? Nothing. No house, no prasadam, no homework at school, nothing. Oh, it was just darkness in all directions. Nobody, nothing. Couldn't say, Hari Bol Prabhu, how's it going? No cell phone. Nothing. no computer, nothing. Darkness in all directions. But he didn't get lonely. He was very inquisitive. That's Brahma's nature. He wanted to know, who am I? What's my duty? Where did I come from? And all those kind of fundamental things usually we're too busy to ask about because we're trying to be successful in life. So he was asking those questions. And he didn't have an answer. Then he heard some splashing of waves because he's on top of a lotus flower, and beneath the lotus flower is Garbhodakshay Vishnu is reclining on the Garbhodak oceans. He heard the splashing of the waves. So deductively he concluded, if I climb down this stem, I'm going to find out where I came from. Good deduction. So he climbed down the stem and down the stem and down the stem and down the stem, and he couldn't find the end to the stem. And then he realized, I'm not going to find out this way. I have to have besides my sense perception, I'm going to need another method to find out where I came from. Just then, when he got that realization, he heard the syllables ta, pa 3 times. Ta, pa means tapasya, means austerity. So he understood, okay, I have to go do some austerity to help qualify myself. So he climbed up back to stem, and he received a mantra, just like we receive a mantra. When those in ISKCON receive Gayatri mantra, they receive the same mantra that Brahma received because he received it and passed it on in disciplic succession, and that's what we get. Same mantra. And he started chanting his mantra. And as he was chanting his mantra, something very wonderful happened. This ocean of darkness in all directions suddenly manifested in the middle of it, Lord Vishnu. And brilliant, effulgent, and surrounded by his potencies and everything. So he then offered this prayer. That's the section, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 11. Brahma's offering a prayer to Vishnu. Oh, my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. So he manifested his form of Vishnu because that was the form that Brahma was thinking of him, and Brahma's honoring his kindness. I'm just going to cover one more verse and we'll end for this evening. But he's moving it now. He's in this Braja Prem mood. My mind becomes bewildered, just trying to think of what reward other than you could be found anywhere. You are the embodiment of all benedictions which you bestow upon these residents of the cowherd community of Vrindavan. You have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members, Sakula, her family members, in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So what is left for you to give to these devotees of Vrindavan, whose homes, wealth, friends, dear relations, bodies, children, and very lives and hearts are all dedicated only to you, Tvat Krite. Nice verse. Very nice verse. It's important verse 10, 14, 35. Here is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. They have given you everything, their homes, wealth, friends, dear relations, bodies, children, and their very lives and hearts. How are you going to reciprocate with them now? You're such a generous giver. You have given yourself to Putana. How then will you reciprocate with these Vrajbasis? What's the answer? Vishnu says, you cannot. Krishna says something similar to the gopis. I cannot possibly repay you. You're going to have to be satisfied with your own devotion. Right? In the Rasa dance section, that's what Krishna says. Brahma is recognizing similarly. Not specifically, he doesn't mention the gopis, he's just all the Vrajbasis. Later comes special appreciation of the gopis amongst the Vrajbasis, but he's just speaking about the Vrajbasis. Specifically, he's seeing the cowherd boys and the calves. But all the residents of Vrindavan have unequaled love, unbridled love for Krishna. And you've given your mercy, we'll go back, not only to Putana, but her family members. Now, who are the family members of Putana? Any of our children know who the family members? You know? Bakasura, and the other one was? It starts with an A. The serpent, his name was? Agasura. Because Brahma saw the mercy given to Agasura, he came to kill Krishna, he got liberation. Bakasura came to kill Krishna, he got liberation. Putana came to kill Krishna, got liberation. You're giving liberation to these bad people. What are you going to do for the Vrajbasis? You know, he's already said there's no greater benediction than giving himself. So that was discussed in verse number 8. No, verse number 3. Verse number 3. Somebody that was attending our classes earlier will remember. It's a very celebrated verse. It's worth, I'll repeat it again. Gyane prayasa udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukaritam bhavadiyavartam. So Brahma is saying, by the process of gyane prayasa, endeavoring to understand Krishna through gyane prayasa, udapasya means throw it away. Discard it. Throw it far away. And instead, namanta eva, offer your obeisances to Krishna. And sanmukaritam bhavadiyavartan. And here, of the glorious activities, instead of the jnana process, here, just like we're doing, hear of the glorious activities of the personality of Godhead, spoken by himself or his pure devotees. And one who not only hears, but they dedicate their lives to these topics. Such a person conquers the unconquerable. Who is the unconquerable? Krishna. And they conquer Krishna because bhakti is so powerful. Krishna, no one can be more powerful than Krishna except his bhakta, because Krishna submits himself to his bhakta. How powerful was Kamsa? Kamsa was like a universal terrorist. All those demons, there's a really detailed description in Gopal Champu of how all the demons became his henchmen, his helpers. He was such a powerful king. He went on tour and challenged kings and smashed their entire army, left them standing alone, and said, I'll give you a choice, Prabhu. You can either be my servant or I'll kill you. What's your preference? So they surrendered. He was really a powerful guy. And when Krishna killed him with just one punch, but when Krishna was wrestling with the cowherd boys, Sridham would always beat him. Why? Because he liked being conquered by his devotees. Sridham would say, "What kind of a big man are you? You always lose." In loving reciprocation with devotee, Krishna likes to be conquered by his devotee. He likes. Krishna becomes controlled by love. So it's such a precious thing. It's not like we want to control Krishna, but we want Krishna's happiness, and one who wants Krishna's happiness, Krishna likes to subordinate himself to his devotee. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna could have smashed the entire other side, but he wanted Arjuna to take the credit. It was already decided. He showed him in the universal form. They're already finished. So you can do it or not do it. It's up to you. They're finished because I've decided. So I want you to take the credit, so you please do. Krishna likes to glorify his devotee, is the point. He likes to honor his devotee and lift his devotee and so forth. He likes to be defeated by his devotee. He runs from Mother Yasoda. He starts to cry. Kunti marvels at Mother Yasoda's love is so great. Krishna wasn't just faking it. Oh, now I'm supposed to cry. Boo-hoo. That's part of the drama. It wasn't like that. He was afraid. Krishna was afraid of the stick in Mother Yasoda's hand. That's unbelievable. He's such a power. He's the creator of the universe, creator of everything. He's afraid of a little stick in Mother Yasoda's hand. Why? Because it's maternal affection. And he was naughty. And she didn't want to just grow up and be a thief. So she was checking him. You can't steal. Not okay. There's a stick. He started to cry. She threw the stick away. The love of Mother Yasoda was able to bind Krishna and cause him to cry. And it wasn't fake. It wasn't play acting. That's the lesson of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Brahma is giving us the lesson of how important is bhakti compared to trying to understand all these things by our intellectual power. Forget it. You won't understand it. Far, 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 far beyond. And then the reciprocation of Krishna with those who dedicate themselves in this way. How is it possible? He gives himself. That's how. He can't give something, he gives himself. So we have just another 10 slides after this. So tomorrow evening we'll wrap it up. As Brahma takes a plunge in the ocean of prema. Let's see if there's some discussion. These two are just getting trained and they're doing a really good job. They messed up the first evening, but now they got it.
Hi Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. So my question is that usually we hear in the pastimes that Krishna's pastimes are inconceivable, that Brahma saw the kids becoming Vishnu and then they disappearing. So how do we understand that they are inconceivable? Because we know they are Krishna, right?
Well, the understanding, I think I understand your question. There's a conception that's notional. But the conception that's notional is not realization. Just like, here's a really simple one. If we asked everybody in the room, are you spirit soul or are you this body? They'll check the box. I'm spirit soul. not the body. Question, how many have realized their spirit soul, not the body? For example. And, and same in relation to Krishna. There's a theoretical jnana and there's vijnana. And to actually have that realization, that's quite, what's unlimited? Just the concept of unlimited is something our little brain, our little mind, our binary processor can't encompass, because everything has its limits. We can have some idea that unlimited means beyond my mind. Okay, it's beyond your mind. Now what is it? It's inconceivable.
Thank you, Maharaj.
We can have a conceptual definition, but not a realization. That's their distinction is. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
So, there is a pastime, I don't remember where I read it, but it is said that when Brahma visits Vaikuntha and he tells the doorkeepers that Brahma has come, then they ask from which universe you are, and then he sees other Brahmas with multiple heads and all those. So, my question is that are these Leelas going on in other universes also?
Oh yeah. Nitya Leela. And he went to Dwarka. That's where he went.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And when he went to Dwarka, the gatekeeper said, "Who are you?" I'm Lord Brahma. Okay, I'll go check with Krishna, see if you can come in. And he came back and said, Krishna wants to know which Brahma. Huh? So, yes, the answer to your question is, here's how we understand it. Here's how it's explained by Prabhupada and our acharyas. Jiva Goswami explains it very wonderfully. Just like somewhere on the Earth planet, the sun is rising. And as it's just hitting the horizon, somewhere a little bit further west, it's just hitting the horizon, a little further, it's just hitting, and then it starts to rise a little bit more. So somewhere on the Earth, the sun is always rising. That's easy to understand. Similarly, as Krishna's making his appearance in the prison house of Kamsa, in this universe, in the next universe, he's just about to appear. And then Krishna appears in that universe, and then the next universe, he's just about to appear. And in this way, Krishna's Bhoma Leela are eternally going on. There's no end to them. It's literally Nitya Leela.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the very nice class. So my question is pertinent to mercy of Krishna.
The mercy of Krishna.
Yes, so Krishna is very merciful to devotees, and that is understood, that is understandable because they have given their lives. But Krishna being merciful to non-devotees or demons, and to that extent that, Krishna is rewarding them liberation. So how do we understand that? Why Krishna is so merciful to the demons who are always envious of him?
Because they're thinking of him. Because of thinking of him, they've become, to a degree, purified. And they're not, the liberation they get, there's some exception. The liberation they get is not Goloka Vrindavan. Generally, the liberation they get is this merging, or the Sayuja. Because they're thinking of him. Now, they're thinking of him in an inimical fashion, but they're thinking of... Your question is the question of Canto 7, Chapter 1. You can read it for detail. There's detail. But your question is Maharaj Yudhisthira's question, because the Chapter 7, Canto 7, Chapter 1, comes just after the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhisthira. And during the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhisthira, what happened? Shishupal got chopped, right? And everyone saw he achieved mukti. So Yudhisthira later, there's a beautiful painting. Krishna is seated on the special seat, the seat of honor. Narada is over here, Yudhisthira is over here, and the other Pandavas are around, and other devas. And he wants to know, how is this possible? Because you're such a bad guy. He was so offensive. But he got liberation. And liberation is hard to achieve by, this and that and the other and the other and the other. So how did he get liberation? Please explain. And then the answer is because he was always thinking of Krishna. Always thinking of Krishna gave him purification. And then he says a lot of interesting things. He says when one is fearful, one is always thinking of that object of fear, even more so than love. So Shishupal and Kamsa were very Krishna conscious. They weren't devotional, so they didn't get, spiritual world. They got this spiritual sky because of that purification. It's a very nice chapter, lots of details to understand the principle of how important it is to think of Krishna, even inimical. So we don't go after that because that's not what's recommended for us. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. When you speak in the microphone?
Does this applies to Aghasura as well?
Yeah. And
The size of mukti?
yeah. It applies to him because he was killed by Krishna. In Canto 2, Chapter 7, there's a list of avatars. Just like Canto 1, Chapter 3, similarly in Canto 2, Chapter 7, list of avatars. When it comes to Krishna, there's one verse that lists the names of all those who got liberation from Krishna. They get liberation from Krishna because they're killed by Krishna. Did you attend the Sunday program? Yes. So you remember the very special quality of Krishna compared to Nrsimha and Ramchandra? Those killed by Krishna get liberation. Because that's a special potency he has, a special mercy that he has. But yes, they were thinking of Krishna. He was one of Aristasura's, one of Kamsa's henchmen. It had a mystic power, he could assume a form like that. But he was thinking of Krishna, and he was killed by Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Krishna is very merciful, but it is said that holy name is more merciful than the Lord himself. Could you please elaborate on that?
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate?
Yes.
You like me to, but I'm asking, would you like to?
No, you
Okay.
please do that.
More merciful than Krishna himself has to do with, in this age of Kali, anyone, qualified, unqualified, can chant Krishna's name. And, even trees and insects and other forms of life can become greatly benefited just by the sound of the holy name that doesn't apply to the same as the form of Krishna. Now, the form of Krishna, maybe you've heard this lecture that Prabhupada gave somewhere, where an ant forget exactly how Prabhupada says it, but if an ant is crawling on the altar and the ant touches the foot of Krishna and kisses the foot of Krishna, he becomes as benefited as the pujari. But not many ants are going to be crawling on Krishna's feet. But the sound of the holy name can be heard by anyone, as long as we do the broadcasting of the name. But access to Krishna is made immediately available, instantly available. Therefore, although non-different, he's more merciful. How's that? Anyone else? Let's see if it's something. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So you mentioned like this is Nitya Leela and it is going on in various different universes. Is that the reason we can say like various acharyas, they give their interpretation and sometimes we saw like something differences between those understanding. So is that the reason? Because maybe they are referring some other leelas?
The common explanation, there can be different reasons for why there's discrepancies. And common answer is different yuga cycles. Different days of Brahma, Kalpa Beda, different days of Brahma. So the way that it works, according to our Acharya's explanation, because we weren't around to see it happen, it's what they say. When the Lord performs pastimes, because he enjoys, and variety is the mother of enjoyment, sometimes the theme is followed in this particular way, and sometimes the theme is followed in that particular way, and sometimes in another particular way during different days of Brahma. So the rasa that's experienced and stimulated, the mood of love that's experienced by those who participate and observe the Lord's pastimes is the same. But the detail is variegated sometimes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
For pleasure purposes. Go ahead.
So Maharaj, So with association of devotees, like that's how we make the most progress in bhakti. In that we have a verse for Guhyam Akhyati Prachati, where it is mentioned that we reveal our mind in the confidently to close devotees. So how does that actually? What does it actually mean? Like, how does association of devotees? Like, because what I know is that coming together, hearing kirtan, or you going for bhakti vriksha programs, is that what is association of devotees? Or when it comes to Guhyam Akhyati Prachiti, what does it actually mean to actually closely associate with devotees?
Well, there are several parts to this one question. Let me break them apart. Association of devotees means serving. Doesn't mean just like being physically proximate, like we're physically proximate. And that's one idea of association, but specifically, it's serving. And at least that should be the mood and the heart of those who are associating with devotees is, how can I be of some service to this Prabhu, this master? So that's one idea one understanding of what association to devotees means. And hearing is one of those processes. Just like you're asking a question, and somebody else and somebody else. So everybody in the room is hearing, and that's a confidential. It may be, more confidential and most confidential, but it's confidential in the sense that it has to do with the well-being of the soul. That's confidential. So confidential disclosing of the mind, there's layers. Confidential disclosing doesn't just mean doesn't mean like that. It means, and it can mean that, It can mean, like, if there's something, supposing, I just had a conversation with somebody today, and their teenager is seeing a psychiatrist or a counselor because their friend committed suicide or tried to commit suicide in school. This isn't in this country, but their friend attempted to commit suicide and it was an unsuccess. And she told her mom that 90% of my close friends are, in the same shape, some kind of self-harm and, depressed teenagers. So I don't think that mother shares that with everybody, but she shared it with me, and she wanted, some guidance. I mean, she's already doing some things, but she wanted to hear something further. So that's a kind of confidential sharing that's not to be disclosed to others. And then it can be, good stuff like, my contemplations on the higher stages of bhakti, and I don't just go blabbering that around here and there. So there's that kind of confidential also. But the baseline of confidential means that which is of benefit to the soul and the soul's journey to Krishna. That's what confidential sharing, disclosing one's mind and hearing, just like we're doing right now, like that, beneficial to the soul.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything else? Hey, way back there? Okay, we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.